Lisa Killinger. Sorry, Fred Hope. I should start with Fred Hope. And Lisa Killinger. Are there any other members of the Hope family here right now? All right, so I'll wait for Jerry Hope if he comes from the canoe launch, which I think was happening today and was quite fun. Okay, so this is the picture taken by Ron Gile over in Juneau. This is when we had to move to the Auk Bay. They closed down Aurora Basin for a year because of the electric planning. So it's one of my favorite photos. And this is a watercolor made by Mark Myers. Please holler at any questions as you go. What I'll be starting with is Princeton. So this is a story of the Presbyterian Church through Sheldon Jackson College. And thank you. And the church used these boats to carry the mercy, comfort, and love that was their mission. In 1929, this boat was built in Seattle, 85-foot boat. 1939, this boat smacked up outside of Auk Bay and sank. Oh, this is called the Princeton. And really what it meant was there was no more church bus. There was no more way to carry the word. And so I just found this photo today on the internet, and I was very pleased. I hadn't found it before. So when the Princeton sank, nobody died in it, and the vessel is still outside of Little Island, right outside of Auk Bay. There's Lincoln Island, and there's Ralston Island, and there's Little Island. That's where this boat sank. They carried 2 tons of potatoes from the Haynes house, going down to Sheldon Jackson College, and they carried 3 little girls from Powak, and 2 ministers and one of their sons, and I got to interview several of the people. The waves were mountain high when this boat was sinking. They were being smacked against the dock in Haynes, and so they cast off in the middle of the night, October 26, 1939, and they snacked up on the reef at Little Island, as I was saying. So this is the way these boats were used by the Presbyterian Church in Sheldon Jackson.
What is the name Princeton?
All right. Where does the name Princeton come from? Thank you for asking. Princeton Theological Seminary was pivotal in creating the Princeton, as I understand. 1929, Seattle, but the Theological Seminary, of course, is in New Jersey. And why they chose Alaska for their support and funding, I don't know. You know, in 1929, so we're heading into the Depression, they put a lot of money into building a boat, and the boat was dedicated to Pacific Northwest, Presbyterians in the Pacific Northwest. So when the boat sank, well, I'm getting ahead of my story, hold on. But thank you for any questions. It helps. Yeah, good. All right, so the Princeton sank, and there was no other way for the church people to get around. So in 1940, they started, this is the Princeton Hall, but before they started Princeton Hall, they had to rebuild the sawmill. And so I'd like to recognize Doris Bailey, right here, the widow of Roy Bailey. Please help me recognize her. Her husband Roy was one of the most amazing boat builders. There were about 25 boat builders that I know of, but Roy was one of the few that I really got to meet and talk with at some length. It's a very sandy, difficult process, creating a boat. The sandpaper, you know, the young men used to say that even with the mast, they couldn't breathe, and so they would chew gum. And so one of the most favorite stories that Roy told me was of putting a chunk of chewing gum up there in the bow, and when we did the renovation 40 years later, he asked if I found the chewing gum, which is a really charming story, so thank you, Doris, for coming and remembering him. The other boat builders that I knew mostly the best were Cyril George, who was in the machine shop class, and then Father Michael Williams. So let's go back to the move here. So this on the left is the dedication of the Princeton Hall, September 1941. On the left is Andrew Hope. I think we've already recognized members of the Hope family. Andrew was the master boat builder. And then in the center are the Presbyterian officials, the moderator of the 153rd General Assembly, and then on the right is a man who helped raise the money in Texas. There was a Texas oil man named Gaines Hall, and he donated $4,000, and that's the way that they were able to complete the Princeton Hall. The Navy seized the boat, but only paid really small amounts. And then at the end of the war, the church had to buy the boat back. But in any event, I'm getting ahead of myself again. So at the right is the dedication of the Princeton Hall by Tilly Howard Hope. And also, thank you, yeah, we have a picture right over here that Lisa brought of Andrew and Tilly. I hope you'll be able to see that.
Tilly, his wife, was she the one who broke the champagne over
That's
the
the
bus?
one, except Tilly Hope.
Little bitty witty Tilly Hope.
Was she really?
Yep, tiny.
Yeah.
Nancy.
And come, oh, Nancy Davis is here. Oh, wonderful.
There you are, Nancy.
Welcome.
Happy sorry I'm late.
And this being a, thanks for being able to see that. This being a Christian college, they didn't use champagne. Leslie Bell told me they used Indian River water with Puerto Rican flower perfume in it. So, right, did you see there, right in the moment of the smacking, is that dedication
Tilly Hope?
of that's Tilly Hope, Tilly Howard Hope.
And we know she's a little bitty thing.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I didn't meet her. I'd like to talk.
I lived in their house.
All right, I'd like to talk with you about that. Okay, so here are the young men in the. This is the boat builders class side. I wish I had a picture of the machine shop side because that's the one Cyril George was in. But in this one, Father Michael Williams is in the far right, the lower right. It's one with the dimples. He converted to Orthodoxy after he married an Orthodox lady. But he carried this photo in his wallet for 20 years. So this is the reason that it's all crinkled up. But this is my only photo. Now, I know that Jim Samard came over when Sheldon Jackson Library was closing, and he took truckloads of material back to Juneau. Maybe somebody will come up with a photo of other boat builders, okay? Somewhere these photos are hidden in attics and your back room, and we're hoping that somebody else has. The boat building was an extraordinary skill for these young men to be taught, and I would love to have more knowledge of this. I've called it, does anybody know what a big, hairy, audacious goal is? Has anybody ever heard of this BHAG? Every once in a while, yeah, somebody has. Okay, It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's something that is beyond your group. It takes vision and it takes heart, but it changes the world. This is Stanford Business School that put it out. And I'll tell you, after the Princeton sank, building a new boat was a big, hairy, audacious goal for Sheldon Jackson College.
Huge.
I mean, it was an enormous undertaking. And it happened because of several convergences. One was Leslie Yaw, and he had a boat called the Carmelita that had just come, and once the Princeton sank, he called them up, or he telegraphed them or something, and said, where are the plans? We want to build a boat just like the Carmelita. And so they did. And these were the students who made it happen. Oh, and Mark Jacobs Jr. is here too.
Oh, yeah, these are some of our way now.
Yeah, I know every single one of these. If you, that's Mark Jacobs Jr. there, right? Okay. I should have one of those. And he was very great help to me too. He always cared that I understood the history of the Tlingit land claims that were being discussed while the boat was being built. This was a class for political leaders. Okay. All right, so then this is the location of the building. And this was called the Howard Brothers Boat Shop. Andrew Hope's wife was a Howard, and they were able to, he arranged with Leslie Yaw, this was a handshake agreement, that Andrew Hope would provide the instruction, the classes would provide the labor, and they scrabbled together the portholes and then beachcomb for the wood. This, as I understand it, boathouse, I think it fell in. It's no longer existing. I think it's right by the A&B Hall.
Or it's by...
Oh, it's still there?
No, they took it down. It's next to SPC.
Yeah. Okay.
There's buildings there now.
And I do have a short video of the launch of the Princeton Hall, but I'm afraid I haven't been able to get it in the same part of the space-time continuum as here. Yes?
The village ended right there, and there was no more buildings beyond that. And all they had there was a kitchen for the cannery crew.
Okay.
And right next to it was a big cannery.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah,
it was isolated. There was no, the road almost ended there too.
Really?
Yeah, thank you.
So Fred, is that past where Pyramid Packing is? Or
No, that's the boat shop.
But it's before that?
And the dock is out in the front of it.
I remember that.
You can continue.
All right. So this is Andrew Hope on the left as a young man, and we took this from his book, 60 Years in Sitka.
Hi, Dad.
Leslie Yaw wrote the book 60 Years in Sitka, which is just a treasure trove. Oh, and I'd like to recognize Nancy Yaw Davis, who's just come in. Thank you. Mr. Yaw was really pivotal to the creation of the boats here during the 1930s and 40s. And so on the right is Andrew Hope as a political leader, and then on the lower right is Andrew and 4 sons.
No?
Who's there?
No.
All right, so this is a seine boat construction, but I wanted to show how the boats are put together. and how you can see the development of the ribs, really, or really this is like the bones of the boat, you know, how the timbers are fastened together, and then of course you need to have everything level on the true. Somebody was asking me, how do you start building a boat? What's the first thing that you do when you're building a boat? Say it again. Okay, good start. I'm talking even before that. What's the first thing that you do?
Carve a half knot.
Say it again.
You carve a half knot.
Well, even before that.
Before the half knot.
What? Make the plans even, well, you cut the plans, but the first thing you do physically to start to build a boat.
You lay out the keel.
You put a plumb bob there. You take a bonk of lead and you hang it from the ceiling because that gives you your vertical. Then you know that when you put a plank in or a transcript member there, that it's going to be level. You need to know that it's where it's level, or whether you're laughing at me. Maybe it isn't the first thing you do when you're starting to build the boat.
It's the first thing that you do when you start to build the boat.
Okay.
Yes, you're right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
All right. So anyway, this is a seiner. I don't remember which one it is, but I really appreciated it. And by the way, I want to give a great thanks to Zhenya Arashenko. She and I have sat together for the last 2 days. It must be 5 or 6 hours, and she's taken all of the images that I have had in a rather disorganized fashion, and she's put them in this incredible PowerPoint. So will you please give her a recognition? I'm just thrilled. She's like an artist with the, pulling the pictures, making them the right size, rearranging them. It's just been a great joy to work with the Maritime Heritage Society here. Okay, so the Navy seized the boat. 3 days before Pearl Harbor, this boat was launched, and as I say, I have this 2-minute clip, video clip of the launching, which I haven't been able to pull into the right space, but it's somebody from the inside. I think it's Vern Swanson. I think it was Vern Swanson who took the film. Anyway, it slid into the water, and 3 days later, 4 days later, the bombs fell at Pearl Harbor. And the Navy came calling, knock, 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 to the Yaw household. And Nancy and her 2 sisters were listening at the stairway. And the man said, we're taking your boat. And Leslie Yaw said, it's an honor to be of service. Here are the keys. It's an honor. We are thrilled that our workmanship is up to the level that the Navy requires. It was a very popular war, obviously. So it still gives me goosebumps to listen to the story, you know, because this is what was going to happen. Suddenly, the church, Sheldon Jackson College, had no means of transportation. You know, the Navy seized the means of transportation. The Navy ran the boat for 2 years, sold her back to the church at the end of the war with the same amount of money that they had. They paid the church just for the ingredients. They didn't pay for the labor. And then at the end of the war, they paid that back. This is P1. I don't know if you can see on the bow there. They conscripted 18 vessels during the war. They even have an office for it. The Office of Small Vessel Procurement. They're the ones that did it. And they came and took these boats. And on the Princeton Hall, they put a cannon on the bow. And they put depth charges on the stern. And you think, well, depth charges, boat doesn't go very fast, right? You know, we're about 10 knots, you know? The people, what was that fellow's name? His father was on the boat during the war. They chained up the depth charges, so nobody could. They could never be released accidentally. But they did have a machine gun on the bow. They had a handheld machine gun, and then they had a cannon on the bow, and they asked the men to train with them. This boat was not stressed for a machine gun. The machine gun cracked the ribs on the starboard side, and the first renovation we had brought 40 feet down in the beautiful yellow cedar that Andrew Hope and Peter Simpson and all those other people had gone through so much effort to get. Yeah, it was a very big adjustment for the Sheldon Jackson College when the Navy seized the boat. And then at the end of the war, I only know a couple of missions that the Princeton Hall served during the war, and maybe there are people here who would know of others. There was a Japanese submarine that was seen off of Cape Decision, and the Princeton Hall went down to the lighthouse to interview the people who had observed it. There was a plane crash, and no survivors, and the Princeton Hall was sent to the site of the plane crash. At the end of the war, I heard ferried prisoners, the Nazi prisoners from North Africa, Rommel's men, who were interned at Excursion Inlet, you know, where they built that big city. So in any event, the Princeton Hall also served as a minesweeper, because with a wood hull, she could go through the mine and neutralize a mine, and a vessel with a steel hull would blow up. So she was useful in very many cases during the war, and I've only interviewed 2 people. I'm hoping that more people come up. Fred.
You left one part out, and that is during the launching, the boat slid off the skid a little bit, but it could not move. So they decided to, instead of pulling straight out, they would pull it sideways and lift it out, but it didn't quite work either. And the skidway started to move around, but they finally found a way to use that tow rope, pull it out of the shop, and it finally slid. And when it did, they cut the power right away. They said, don't let it go on the beach next. So the whole shop was full of Sheldon Jackson students. And everybody was cheering when the boat finally started to slide down. And just before that, Tilly broke that bottle on the bow, and that was the official launching. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't think I've talked with you about that day, but I'd like to know more. I've got more questions. Nancy?
You know, the video that, I mean, it's the video now, but Dad took a picture of this, and he also has a parade of the kids, the students going down Lincoln Street, 2 by 2. And I think that's in the version, isn't that in the version?
Let me get it to show people. There's a lovely DVD.
I didn't know what the kids were going through
I've
until
got
you
it.
put it together. Yes, that's it.
Is that the one that Rebecca Paulson?
I can't see it.
Sorry. No, I don't. Rebecca, were you involved with this one?
It's Nancy's brother Chuck. It's footage taken by Les Yaw, narrated by him in the 80s, and Nancy's brother Chuck digitized it. And then all I did was put it in a package.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, there's some footage of the building of the the sawmill also, which I'd like to, let me just pass that around. Go ahead and then here's also the book. Let me just pass the book around too, because maybe some people would like to add to that.
What's the price for that?
Oh, they were good friends. I
Can I
really appreciate
say-
it. Mike,
Can I say, if anybody's interested in watching a video or owning a copy of the video, we have it for sale for $10 a disc.
it's extraordinary.
It's an amazing,
We should get people together that will recognize the
Yes.
students and the faculty. March down to the dining room, which is MPH.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you would recognize those.
Nancy has a good idea. We'll reconvene at some point and watch some of this video because it's just exceptional to see. All right, so the launch occurs. She's seized by the Navy. She's run by the Navy, and somebody told me she was ridden hard and put away wet, you know. Have anybody, you know that expression? Yeah, you know, that's an expression of using horses. But in any event, they left a radio on board, which was better than what the church had planned. But they ran her aground, and then they put the machine gun on. So it was a challenge for the church to take her back, but they did. And Leslie Y'all sent a telegram to all the Presbyterian churches in the country, you know, sing the doxology, the Princeton Hall is coming back from the Navy. And it really was a time of rejoicing. And they painted her. They painted her white. See, because with the Navy, she was gray. Yeah. Okay, so she comes back to the church. I think that's Wanamaker. She came back to the church in the middle of 1944. And they surplused, well, the war wasn't really over, but they surplused you know, these vessels at the time. And one of the first jobs that this boat did was the Hoona Fire, June 14th, 1944. And Walter Sobolev took the boat over after this catastrophic fire. And
What's the fire?
the fire where Hoona burned in 1944.
Oh, Lord, oh my,
You remember this?
no, it's before my time.
Okay.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
If anybody has a parent or a grandparent who remembers it, I've talked to people who were in Excursion Inlet, watching, and were just distraught, of course, because the whole place was burning. And part of the Father Michael Williams told me part of the reason for the catastrophic fire was that the Navy, when they were building Excursion Inlet, had hundreds and hundreds of these 50-gallon drums of fuel.
Oh my.
And somebody without knowledge of the extreme tides had the barrels put on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
And then the high tide came and took them away. And then that's a real danger to boating, to have a 50-gallon drum, because they don't, you know, they're mostly under the water. So people would take them from Hoona, and once they used the fuel, they would leave them underneath their houses without a knowledge
still are
of
there.
the incendiary nature of it.
They're still there.
There may be, well, this is what happened, and it was catastrophic. But
I
Walter
wondered
Sobolev
why.
was, he was very, he said, he said they were sitting in the muskeg and they were very unhappy. And so his mission of mercy, comfort, and love was very much appreciated
I've never seen it.
right then.
Have you seen this?
Okay, and then another comment of Superintendent Yaw. We worked like beavers to get our sturdy little ship. Now our pride and joy lie in the fact that our work was good enough to pass Navy inspection and to help in time of emergency. Actually, this slide is a little out of order, but this was sent to all the churches, all the Presbyterian churches in the country.
Could I make another comment?
Please.
When the time came to launch Princeton Hall, they were tugging on it and it wouldn't move. And when a boat's tugging on something, it's going to move because that's a heavy boat pulling on it. But it finally moved just a little bit and then it jumped off the cradle.
Oh my.
And
It's on that.
yeah,
Thank
the
you.
whole shop was shaking and all the students were running out the door. And you would think somebody would have got hurt, but no, nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt. And Moses Johnson was on the bow because he told me as he slid out, as the boat slid out, he was on the bow there. So we'll collect the video of that, and then through the Sitka Maritime Heritage Association, we'll give people the opportunity to come and see that too. It's a very exciting 2.5 minutes. Alrighty, hold on. Okay. All right. So this after the war, this is what was called the Presbyterian Navy. And it was the SJS-2 that was built after the Princeton Hall, and then the Princeton Hall, and then the Anna Jackman, which was a steel boat that had been built, I think in Florida, and it came through the Panama Canal. Henry Fawcett was on board. I was going to ask you more about that. Anyway, these 3 boats constituted the Presbyterian Navy. And that's Lawrence Doy. Is standing there. He was skipper of the Princeton Hall in the 50s. Okay, now, captains and pastors in the 50s. First one, this is Walter Sola, who had the Memorial Church downtown Juneau. And there...
Kentucky man.
Say it again?
Kentucky man.
Kentucky man, that's right. That's right. He was the first Tlingit
I never saw him young.
pastor. Yep, that's him young. And he was from Killisnoo, Angoon. And he went to, his parents were Orthodox. His grandfather was the Orthodox priest, Sobolev. And after the Russian Revolution, the money dried up. The Russians had been sending the money to the churches in Southeast Alaska, the Orthodox churches. You have a big Orthodox church here too, and the church in Moscow had been sending the money, but then at the Bolshevik Revolution, Walter told me, the money dried up. So he went to Sheldon Jackson, and he became a Presbyterian, and he went to the Dubuque Theological Seminary. But then he got tuberculosis, and
like everybody else.
And he was in the sanatorium for a year, and then he was just so heartened that the Presbyterian Church had paid during that time, and then continued offering him subsidized education. He was extremely eloquent about that. And so in 1940, he was ordained. And this is 1994 in the upper left. We took him on a trip around Admiralty to Huna, Angoon, and Cape with Walter Sobolev and Cy Peck Sr., who I think I have a slide there now, and Marianne Warden, and Paul Bear, Zeiger. Does anybody know Zeiger? Yeah. Gertie Zeiger was I forget the man's name, but anyway, we went around, we did a 1994 trip, and there's Walter, just explaining the world from the Princeton Hall wheelhouse. And then there he is, laughing with Cyrus Peck Sr. And they were just telling jokes in Tlingit and enjoying themselves no end. And I was really charmed by that. And then in the upper right, that's the original cross on the Princeton Hall. We had to replace the mast because it had some soft wood, and we replaced it with a steel mast. But we keep the original cross on the boat. And then this is the '94 trip. It was circumnavigation of Admiralty that I was just describing. That's Mary Ann Warden in the front there. And this is Cyrus Peck Sr., who also ran the boat in the 1950s. I found all those records in the Presbyterian Historical Society in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. Okay, so now we're jumping ahead. I married a man who owned the boat. I married him in 1979, and he had bought the boat in 1977. He was the third private owner, and we didn't realize that we needed to do a renovation right away. That was a surprise, but we did. And here's the boat in Sitka. And when we brought the boat to Sitka for the work, I met Leslie Yaw, her wonderful, cherished dad. And I don't know how old he was in 1984, but
He'd be 84.
84. And I was just telling somebody what a good gardener he was with all those roses that he used to have.
Yeah, he sure did.
And Mr. Yaw was not only a gardener of roses, he was a gardener of people. This man could see your optimal, he could see what God was calling you to do, and then he could weave those things together. This man was a cherished organizer of people's spirits and souls, and I should have prepared some remarks about him because he was just so important. When I met him, he was interviewing Ellen Hope Hayes, and he invited me to the interview, and then he gave me a copy of the transcript afterwards. I'm trained as an attorney, and I just was knocked over that he had a transcript of not only this, but several other things from the construction of the boat, particularly the Carmelita, which I was telling you about, was the sister ship. Okay, so this renovation was about 8 or 9 months, and then I'm sorry, I'm out of order here, I'm sorry. This is back to the 50s, this is Dick Nelson, and on the right is
Richard Nelson?
Princeton Hall, yep. You remember him?
Yeah.
Yep.
1941.
Yep, yep. And the Vermeil that Vern Swanson built, Vern and Mayrell, and then Vern Swanson died when the Vermeil sank outside of Cape Shackett. But there's the Princeton Hall, and then that's Dick Nelson. Okay, and then in 1949, the church sent 100 students to Seattle. Is there anybody in this room who was on that trip in 1949, actually 1948?
Herbie Dierksen was, but he just died.
Yeah, yeah. And Kogi File. Kogi. Anyway, I've heard several versions of this, but in any event, they had 50 girls on the Princeton Hall. They had 50 boys on the SJS. They rafted up and sang to each other all the way down. And this is their being welcomed in Seattle. And at the 50-year class reunion in 1987, I sent the Princeton Hall over, and we had a lot of people who remembered this event and were willing to share. Okay. And then this is Father Michael Williams, who converted to Orthodoxy when he married the Orthodox woman, and that's at Killisnoo. We went to clean the graves at Killisnoo, which was the internment. I suppose people will know about the internment. The Aleut people from St. George and wherever were interned, mostly in Funner Bay, but also here at Killisnoo. Okay, so this is, again, jumping ahead to the future. It was so fun. We took out James Mishner. After he spent all that time here at Sheldon Jackson, did anybody know him when he was
Oh, yes.
He was here? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a serious, researcher, writer, and all. So anyway, we got to take him out on the Princeton Hall, and that's me. And then to my right there is Judge Stewart, who was
He was
also
a
up there.
sweetheart.
Yeah, and then this is my husband with James Michener. We took him to the Saltery in up Taku Inlet, and everybody knows he wrote the book Alaska, right? Yeah, he has the California that sank in Gambier Bay. He has it sink in the exact wrong place. Don't believe Alaska. Don't believe the book Alaska. Don't take any accuracy, okay? He had the boat sink. The USS Californian, had sink within a few minutes, but he puts it in a different bay. It was in Gambier Bay. Sorry, I did a little exercise because you want to be able to trust what you're reading when it looks so real and it has all these indicia of reality. But anyway, he turned novelist every once in a while. Okay, and then this is also the renovation. These are the Ingram brothers. They did a lot of the first renovation. And I hate to look at these things, but this is the way when we started the first renovation, this is what we were dealing with. Those oak ribs were rotted. And those oak ribs were rotted. Yeah, yeah. And then the planks all the way back to the transom, some of them 40 feet, where the Navy had, the Navy just bolted the machine gun or the cannon right there on the starboard bow. So we were able to make it through. We had a tolerant banker, and we had some extraordinary working people. And we were able to redo the windows in the wheelhouse with the same skill, no nails. You're looking at no nails. And then this is Tim Ingram measuring a plank. And then when we were able to finish it there on the lower right. Okay, so here is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. It still gives me I'm giving a big sigh. Well, I knew we were going to be able to complete it when I took this picture. The worker just left his coffee cup and moved away, and then the sunshine was just coming down the companionway, and it just gave me such a sense of peace. And I just felt then that we were going to be able to finish the job. Okay, so then the next section of the boat's life is charter work, private work anyway. So we were under NOAA permit number for quite a while. The whale research work was just the best. I really loved that. And Jan Straley worked from the Princeton Hall for a while. Sylvia Earle, anyway, we had a lot of important whale scientists and oceanographic scientists. And we got to see some extraordinary Megaptera novangelicae or something like that. Charismatic, I'm butchering it, what's the name? Novanglia, okay, Novanglia, yeah. And charismatic megafauna, this, right? And then there's echelon feeding up at the top, and then a nice spin. You come over in Juneau, we've got a whole new sculpture of a whale like this, a 28-foot bronze sculpture of a humpback whale, life-size, on the waterfront in Juneau, right by the bridge. Okay, so here's more whales. When Jenya and I were putting these things together, I said, oh, look, there's a second whale. Oh my gosh, there's a third whale. And there are obviously more whales over to that direction because you can see the camera is pointed that way. And then this is one of the captains, Dale Anderson. Rich Forrest is another one of the captains. Did Rich come back in? I want to recognize that. And then all of this wonderful barbecuing that's been done on the boat, feeding lots of people. Then this this was a charter for salmon, and while they were bringing in this 25-foot salmon, 25-pound salmon, sorry, the shark came and consumed the whole fish. That's it, gone. Okay, and then this is one of the film crews. Okay, we're just about finishing up over there. I think the musicians are getting started here. Anyway, film crews, they were the wonderful. We did BBC, we did Tokyo Film Crew. They were just wonderful. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. Okay, and then one last thing I think is of interest for people. This is the nuclear submarine, the USS Alaska, which Senator Murkowski, the father, arranged for, I think, about 1994, and we had to build stairs to get 25 VIPs were supposed to come onto the vessel, but they needed to, you see how high the structure of the submarine is? I think it was 28 feet above the water. So we had to build a gangway and then take the people there so they could experience what it was like to dive with a nuclear submarine. Okay, and then I think, oh, I'm sorry, that's not the last bit. This is one of the humpback whale photos that I really like. This was dawn at Cape, and you can see the light of dawn first hitting the front of the wheelhouse there. Then we got to take, in 2015, Bessie Cooley, the lady on the left, told me that her father was born in Taku Harbor in 1906. And so I said, we have a great, I really enjoy going to Taku Harbor, would you like to come? And then Nora Danhauer came there in the middle there, and you can see Nora Danhauer just passed a couple of weeks ago. Very, very great loss, very lovely lady, and a powerful researcher and a strong linguist. And that's her daughter to her left, Della. And then I'm telling you, there's several people here who are important in the PhD in Tlingit language, right there. James Crippen, Marcia Hotch, Alice Taft, and then Bessie Cooley is on the right there. And she was so interested as to what it was like in 1906. See, the Hudson Bay Company had a fort there from 1830 to 1840, and there was a whole lot of trade going on then. Anyway, ask me afterwards. If you want to know, ask me afterwards. And then that is and this is the Rimuños of the Princeton Hall. But I also want to recognize this beautiful model over here of the Princeton Hall, and it was built by Max Cottrell, right over here. And I think we'll take it down afterwards and see if anybody would like to. I did. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah. So I think that's all, but I'd take any questions or comments. Fred?
Comments. The Princeton Hall was a very long boat, and it was streamlined. Therefore, it was fast, and it was hard to get engines in them days, but he was still able to get a great marine engine. But what you had was in the low cabin area, that was the galley, and the midsection, that was where you could sit around. And then the bow, they try to keep the man that's on wheel watch from having too many visitors, so they made a small area up there. I don't know if it's still that way or not.
Well, I'm so grateful to Fred for your memories of the launching, and I've only talked with one other person who was there at the time of the launching, and so I look forward to talking with you afterwards more about that. Any other questions or comments? Zoe?
Was there a kicker on the boat?
Was there a kicker on the boat? No, this boat was powered by the engine that won the war, the 671 Jimmy Diesel, which is a big engine. It's bigger than bigger than that table over there, see? And it's an inboard. It doesn't have any outboards on it. So then after we had to replace that, we went to a John Deere engine, and it was a little bit smaller and more efficient. But the Gray's was the first engine, yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. I had forgotten about that. But then the 671 and then the John Deere, but they're all inboard. Yes, Jenya.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming and doing it for us. And I want to let everybody know Kathy came on her own back, so we couldn't probably we couldn't find money for the ticket. So it was amazing to have you here, and we're really grateful to have you talking to us. And I think what is amazing for me, obviously many people in this room are knowledgeable about history of the boat, but I think it's fascinating how many different historic themes and how many different people and places are connected in this one hall, in this one very historic vessel.
Thank you. And I would like to have a round of applause for the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society, because they're putting this whole thing on. Thank you. Rebecca and Mike. Any other board members of the Sitka Maritime Heritage? Oh, over there. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to the association.
Well, and I mean, this boat would not be here without you and your husband. I mean, those pictures of the rebuild were jaw-dropping. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting.
Bill, that's just, yeah, I mean, incredible work you've done. And interviewing all these
I'll have
people.
to tell a quick story about Rebecca. She made me a list. She made me a list of the boats. Andrew Hope built 21 boats in his lifetime. And he was a legislator both before and after statehood. And and then the other wonderful thing that Rebecca has done is that when Max Cottrell went to her several years ago and said, I really need to make a model of a boat. What boat do you suggest? And she said, well, the Princeton Hall is overflowing. And so he came over and he took lead lines all around the Princeton Hall and took pictures of them. And can you make a comment about that? The accuracy is just remarkable.
Well, I went over there. I emailed Kathy. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. I said, I want to make a model of the Princeton Hall. Can I come look at it? She says, sure, come ahead. So I flew from here to Juneau. She met me with her car, let me sleep on the boat, loaded me in her car while I was there. And during the day or two that I was there, I had my little tape measure, and I measured everything I could possibly think of, and took as many pictures as I could think of. And that was wonderful. She didn't know me from that. You didn't know that I was going to actually do it.
And do you know that was the first model we ever made?
Yeah, I've never made a model before. Well, I had to do something.
But tell us about why you hung the little balls of lead.
Oh, well, actually it was rocks, because I didn't have any lead. I had some string and I tied a rock on the end, and I dropped it from the side, and then I measured in at the water line to see how far it did, because I didn't know what the shape of the hull was going to be like. So at least I got that part of it, and then I kind of estimated the rest of it from there. But that was a way of figuring out the shape of the hull.
So you really just took a stone?
What's that?
You just really took a stone and...
Yeah, a rock, and it tied a...
Yeah.
Some of them broke off. I had to tie.
Well,
that was very interesting project. It took me, we were in Sitka for a year at that time, and it took me that whole year to work on that thing. I spent hours and hours, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm glad it came out.
I'm so grateful. And so this takes it back to me was the establishing the vertical. You know, here he is with measuring, having just gravity show you vertical. This is how the boat was started, with just the emptiness and the one vertical. Okay, yes.
What's the status of the boat now?
Well, private work, church work. I've been going to like the dedication of the clan house over in Hoona. But if anyone wants to know about the status of the boat, please see me afterwards. You know, I am just one of me now, and I'm 67, and so the boat is going to be going on into the future, and there'll be a different chapter of the boat's life. So see me afterwards if you want to know more. Okay, let's close. Okay, two things. First Nancy, and then Fred.
Would you forgive me? I thought it was 1949, that famous trip, and it's because Chuck Daniels was on it, and he graduated in 49. But I was wrong. I think it was 48.
The newspaper says 48.
Yes, I believe you. My apologies. And this was wonderful, the memories of the and I could identify some of the people on the boat, and I'm sure that Chuck would be able to identify a lot more. Polly was there. Geraldine Bean,
Yes.
Tornado.
Yes.
With the curly hair.
That's right.
Yes.
She was an incredible choir director.
And then last night I was reading in my mother's diary, and she went to Presbyterian on the boat, and she lists everybody that got on it. Oh, it's great reading. So I wanted to hear that.
All right, I'll come. All
Barbara
right.
Haynes remembers going.
Fred is going to close us off, but sorry?
Barbara Haynes remembers being on the boat.
Oh, she was.
And going to villages on the boat.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay.
Both
Fred is
boats-
going to close us out.
Both boats were built to carry students, and they made as many bunks as they could squeeze into the hull. And FCS was 56 feet long, but it was wide. And then I think the Princeton Hall was 70 feet. but I'm not
65.
sure. But they were all built to carry passengers, as many as they could squeeze aboard, and deliver them to Sitka or take them back home. That's it.
That's it. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy.